Hi, everyone. Welcome to ElCo Chats. My name is Julieta. ElCo Chats is a regular podcast where we feature some of our El Camino College graduates, current students, staff, faculty, and managers who work here at the college. For today's episode, I get to chat with Brittany Hubble, who is an El Camino College alumna, professor of communication studies, and assistant director of forensics. So multiple titles. Welcome, Brittany.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Happy to chat with you. Let's start with getting to know you. So if you can, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
So, as you introduced me with my status as professor, so I teach communication studies classes here at El Camino College, but I also work with the speech and debate team. I have been affiliated with El Camino since 2011 when I started here as a student. And as I love to tell my students at the beginning of every class, once I came to El Camino, I've never left. So I've hopped around all different parts of campus and offices, and both as working and as a student. So I feel like I'm very much a part of El Camino, and it's part of why I'm very excited to get to be here with you.
And so we want to hear more about that. So could you please share a bit about your experience as an El Camino College student? Were you a part of any clubs or organizations, and what drew you to El Camino?
So I'll start with the simple part first, which what brought me here to El Camino. The school itself is because it's a local school for me. It was growing up. I knew I wanted to go to a really good four-year school, and coming out of high school just wasn't going to get into the school that I ultimately wanted to. And so I'd heard great things about El Camino. I'd heard about students who get to go on and, go to the schools they really want to. So that's why I ultimately ended up coming here. But I feel like when I got here, I really learned how much being here could open me up to so many different things. So as a student here, I was in the honors transfer program. I was involved in the Alpha Gamma Sigma club and organization. And then I felt like I really, really started getting involved when I joined Interclub Council, which I learned about through an AGS meeting. And from there, I went on to not just be with ICC, where I started as a commissioner, vice president, and then became president. I learned about the ambassador program and got to work with you in outreach. And then, of course, joined the forensics team, which honestly is probably one of the most life-changing things that I never expected to happen when I came here. But I'm just so grateful that not only did I find the activity, but this particular program.
And that's what we're here to learn about today. But back to your experience as a student, do you have any favorite or memorable moments as a student?
So I really, really enjoyed my time working with the Interclub Council. Like I said, forensics is very important, but I felt like that was not only very influential, but very enjoyable for me. I used to get to work with someone who doesn't work here anymore, Brianna Von Stein. And we really used the resources that we had through the Interclub Council, through the campus, to put on some really unique events. And one of those, there were several that stood out, but one of those was we called it Let My Voice Be Heard. And it was an anti-human trafficking event where we had live painters, we had speakers come out, it was very both like informational and, brings you in touch with reality, but also just like a fun community experience. And so I think events like that and getting to be involved with the ICC and work with some of those people, which is such a big part of my experience here at El Camino.
I remember that event, and I think it was great that students really take that opportunity to lead a lot of the effort to get some of these events going on campus.
Yeah, it was, through forensics, I've gotten more interested and kind of involved with like activism and political movements and stuff like that. But really that event was kind of like opened my eyes to it. It was something the issue is something that Brianna Von Stein worked with all the time. And when she kind of told me about it, I feel like there were a lot of eye-opening moments in my time as a student here, but that was a big one of them of like, wow, maybe there are bigger things in the world that, many of my peers, myself, don't know about. And so it was unique being able to have that guidance, but also drawing in different members of the campus community. And like you said, especially the students, coordinating to inform ourselves and then also inform other students and also, bring money and awareness to the cause as a whole. So I loved getting to have that student-led experience. And it was a lot of fun.
Thank you. So you brought up forensics and, we'll start talking about your experience with forensics. So how did you start in forensics? And forensics, as we know it, is speech and debate. How did your involvement shape your college experience? But if you can just really tell us, what is forensics? Because we hear forensics and we might think of crime scene type of shows or whatnot, or investigations are happening. But what is forensics related to speech and debate? And how did that shape your involvement here at El Camino College?
Yeah, so fun fact, the forensic scientists, while what they do is great, actually kind of stole the term from us. Forensics is a term that was coined by Aristotle a long, long time ago, and having to do with not only persuasion and building arguments, but also being able to understand arguments that you're being presented with, dissect the arguments. So maybe that's where some of the forensic scientists kind of latched on to that attention to detail and investigative nature. But all of this is what we do in forensics or speech and debate. And so that appears in many different formats through not just being a speaker, but being an audience member to other speakers, and then, of course, engaging in all sorts of debate. So there are a lot of different things that we do, but that's the kind of general main idea of what our students compete in and what those in our kind of activity do. What drew me to it, so this is going to be funny, but I remember being in student government, and I was working with another El Camino alum, Brooke Matson, and she had this jacket. And growing up, I never did sports. My mom actually always used to say, like, you should go find a way to do debate and be a lawyer one day, because I was always very argumentative. But I never did sports or was a part of like a team or activity. And when I saw this jacket and kind of that sense of like family and unity that the people on the team had, I was like, that would be cool to be a part of, because my own family had actually moved away at the time and I was kind of here by myself. But then I took a public speaking class with Chris Wells, who also still teaches here, and I work with him all the time. And he's kind of started pushing me, saying like, you need to join the team. It wasn't even I think you'd be good at it. It was, I'm going to tell the coaches about you. So you should reach out to them. Otherwise, they're going to be contacting you. And I'd already had the interest in it, and took argumentation with Mark Crossman that very next summer. So this was in the spring, and ended up joining the team and competed here I only competed for 2 years. I actually competed here my last year as an El Camino student. But then after I transferred, I loved the team so much, and UCLA didn't have a program. And I wanted to keep doing forensics and working with the same people. So I actually enrolled in some other classes here so I could continue to compete for El Camino even when I was a student at UCLA. Yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Wow, that's great. I do remember the debate jackets that the team would wear. And so that was kind of special. That's what really drew the interest at first. And you mentioned some of the faculty. So how did the faculty and your peers influence your development as a speaker and debater? And did you have any mentors who played a crucial role in your success?
So I think I was, and this is part of why people like Chris Wells kind of latched on to me, I already had pretty decent speaking skills and ability to speak in front of people without being too nervous. And they really helped like polish and refine that and help me be more, I think, intentional and focused. I mean, because in everything we do with speech and debate, there are time constraints for everything. And so learning how to, okay, I know how to say this argument or make this point, but how can I say it not only in a way that is persuasive to this particular audience, but in an efficient manner, so I'm not dragging on too long, but also able to meet those time constraints. So I really feel like making me a more intentional, focused speaker, as well as improving my kind of just general public speaking skills, helped with that quite a bit. And in terms of mentors, I mean, definitely Bart Crossman. He was the one that like really pulled me out of the debate class. And I worked with him a lot in debate when I was a student, but also Francesca Bishop. I mean, I would be remiss to not bring her up, even though she wasn't the one that recruited me. I basically have become almost her mini-me here on campus. I mean, she's preparing me to take over the team eventually when she retires. And I say that's important because being involved in forensics, I mean, my time as a competitor was limited. Most of my time, the over a decade now in forensics, has been as a coach, as an administrator, and she really helped me understand how to do all the technical things, but also be a leader, which I think is like, there's a lot of overlap with forensics, and those skills, those speaking and critical thinking skills help you be a better leader too. So, she's almost been like a second mom to me, honestly, and has been so impactful and professionally, but also personally, and helping me be the best person I can that allows me to be a good coach and a good professor and fulfill all these other roles.
Thank you. And so that's a little bit about your student experience in forensics. And so from your perspective, now, change your hat from alumna to professor of communication studies and the assistant director of forensics. From that perspective, how does participation in forensics help students develop essential skills like critical thinking, public speaking, and research? And just thinking about the students you've worked with, how have you seen this in them?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, obviously I've coached a ton of students, and I mean, there's nobody I have seen in my experience who has come, even dabbled in forensics and not walked away learning something. So like you pointed out, obviously having the ability to speak better and have a little bit more confidence in speaking in front of people. And I think that's so important because we have to interact with people all the time. And a lot of the students who've been on the team, even if just briefly, tend to feel less nervous for job interviews and are kind of going on and advancing in ways that I see other students, even at El Camino, aren't necessarily doing. But like you pointed out, the critical thinking skills, I think, is huge, especially with how much media and content and information we are bombarded with constantly. And even though this is something that we teach in our classes, working in forensics where you're constantly having to comb through information and make it meaningful and understand what is, maybe good quality evidence, not good quality evidence, how that impacts the argument it's being used with. I think beyond just career stuff is so important for daily life and stuff. And then, you'd mentioned research as well. I think that's also a huge thing because even if, we have a ton of students who are on the team who aren't necessarily communication studies majors. In fact, most of them aren't. And they go into like poli-sci and law, some of the obvious kind of related fields, but even we've had several computer engineering science majors who go on and do these really great research projects when they transfer and get hired on to do these when they graduate. And so many of them credit that experience of every week having to become kind of mini experts on different topics and be able to engage and interact with arguments about them just makes people be able to prepare and navigate those kind of obstacles way more easily.
Great. And so this next question is my favorite, just because somebody who works here, I see these emails come through all the time of, hey, guess what just happened? And we want to celebrate the success of the team. So could you highlight just some of the team's recent successes and achievements, and what makes the El Camino College team stand out from other college forensics programs?
So, this past year, we had a bit of a rebuilding year, but the 2 years before that, we achieved some of the highest levels of success you can in forensics for us. So the year before, not 1 year ago, but 2 years ago, We won first place overall at nationals, at our community college nationals for the first time in El Camino history. And, we tend to place high in many other years, and in my experience as well. But that was the first time we had more points than literally any other school in the country. And I mean, there are so many factors that impact how we're going to do at any tournament, but especially nationals. We can take the smartest, most talented students, but some things are just kind of chance and these variables we don't have control over. So, but it was a very especially talented team that year. And yeah, I remember when we won, it was really sweet, actually. The students had corralled me and said that we have an issue. And I thought, oh no, what am I having to help fix now? But then I found out that we were going to win nationals, and what they had corralled me for was actually to give me a thank you card. And I remember like bursting into tears. I was like, you don't even know how wonderful you all are. Like, I feel so grateful that you're showing your appreciation, but you're so talented. You're going to win us first place in history. And then the year after that, we had a student win the top individual student in the entire tournament, which in some ways is almost harder than what we had done the year before, because they have to beat out every single other student that is there at nationals. And we hadn't done that for 20 years. So those are some great moments, and kind of always main goals of ours, but ones that we realistically are like, maybe that's not going to happen this year. And so to have those things happen in back-to-back years, and me get to be there and be a part of that was definitely special.
So what makes El Camino stand out? And I know you're sharing, the national, but I think you tell us a little bit about what are the different type of schools we beat out?
Yeah, sure. So there are a lot of community colleges that other people wouldn't necessarily know of unless you're involved in forensics. But I think what's also special, some of the ones that our listeners might know more about, are the 4 years that we tend to beat out consistently. So we frequently will beat UC Berkeley, both in individual debate rounds, but also how much success we accumulate over the season. Same thing with UC San Diego. Nationally, schools like Rice University, schools all over the country that are, pretty prestigious schools that we do end up beating out. So, and I think that's fun for our students, especially when they're looking to transfer and kind of seeing like what they can do, and to get to go in and say, I really want to go to this school. And it's cool that I got to beat them in debate or in speech when I was just a community college student, because honestly, not a lot of community college students can say that. Not a lot of community colleges compete at the 4-year level quite like we do. Yeah. And you had mentioned, what makes us stand out? So for anybody who follows sports or anything, and the system concept, I like to apply that here because it really does to the way we do things at El Camino. So I'm very fortunate, while I think I add something to the program, to be joining a program that has so much history of creating a routine and a method that just seems to work. I mean, every year I run into coaches in our community and they ask me, how do you get these students who you recruited out of classes, oftentimes on the very first day of the fall semester, and you have them winning awards all throughout the year and then being national champions at the end? And it's really because of the kind of intense method, I would say, of coaching, not a harsh way, but we make our students learn a lot really fast, but we practice a lot. We're supportive. We all have a lot of experience in coaching successful students, and I'm struggling to think of another school that has a combination of coaches that have not only experienced so much competitive success themselves as students, but also in coaching as well. And I'd say one other thing is that all the coaches for the forensics program went to El Camino and competed for the program. And so we know how things have been, what's worked in the past. And we have like a very special bond too. And I think that really helps contribute to our success.
Absolutely. That definitely does sound like that winning method for you all. So, and thank you so much for all that you do. And thinking about the students as well as they are going through the forensics program at El Camino, in what ways can a background in forensics prepare students for future careers? And you touched on it a little bit earlier, but specifically, what are some industries or professions that value these skills?
Sure. I mean, like I said earlier, I think honestly, no matter what field or industry you're going into, you're going to have value there. But there are certainly more that we're more feeders into. So I think the most obvious one is the legal field. We have a ton of people who eventually go on and become attorneys. My debate partner, Ariel Stevenson, from when we went here, is actually an attorney now. And so there were a handful of those. A lot of people who go into politics, but not necessarily as candidates. A lot of political organizing, a lot of working for people who are politicians. And I like to emphasize that because the kind of research that we had talked about earlier and the really like building arguments and going through all sorts of information is so much of the behind the scenes work in politics. We see the politicians all the time, but there are people, many who come from forensics, who help them in those back rooms, put campaigns together, put policy together, and do all of that. So those are definitely some of the kind of primary areas I see a lot of our alum going into. But maybe not shockingly, there's a good handful of them that go on and become teachers. And a lot of them credit being in speech and debate with the ability to get those skills to be able to stand in front of a classroom to deal with maybe difficult, stressful situations. But a lot of them have told me that after their experiences, like having, not to toot our own horns, but us as kind of educators to them who serve not just to teach them material, but kind of develop a mentorship role, and how meaningful that was for a lot of students who were on our team and on other teams too, end up going on and want to be educators themselves and be involved in the education field in general.
Yeah, so definitely it seems like the obvious one, right? Like you mentioned legal, but there really is a variety of different career options for students who are in speech and debate and forensics. And so what is a lesson or two that you've learned from your experiences as a competitor and a coach?
I mean, I think a kind of more life-oriented one is that there are a lot of things that are unpredictable and that we can't control. So just to kind of draw a parallel here, at debate tournaments we go to, in a single day, both us as coaches and the students may be faced with 5 to maybe even 8 different controversial debate topics that we have to prepare for that debate, obviously execute that debate, adapt to different people. And you can't control who you're going to debate against, what topic you're going to have, who's going to be evaluating you or watching you in that moment. But you can control your preparedness for that and being in the best position to do as well as you can. And while that definitely serves you in speech and debate, in life as well, I think very much that helps you out with that. And again, this is something I've actually heard from alumni from the team that, they face some obstacles, whether it's after they had transferred or as they're trying to get a job, but they feel better prepared to deal with those kinds of things because of the kind of crazy nature that speech and debate is sometimes, but also those skills of preparation, definitely.
Thank you. And our final question now, for those who are thinking about applying to El Camino College, what advice do you have for people who are thinking about applying?
I would say that one, kind of the big picture is make the most of your experience on campus. I think, there's the very common stigma of it's a community college. Maybe students aren't going here because it was their first choice or, wasn't their first choice. And don't see how much there is for them to do, how many different places they can not only find support, but find home and companionship and learn new things, and also get to maybe participate in activities where they get to use strengths and skills that they've always had, but they've never known what to do with. And so I think try to take on as much as you, not take on, but experience as much as you can outside of your classes, get to know people who work here, because again, I'm a little biased, but I'm a big fan of the people who work here, both as faculty and staff and administration. And you can build some good relationships that, you go on from being a kind of mentor boss to student, and now maybe one day get to work together and open up other opportunities beyond when you leave El Camino.
Thank you. Thank you so much for letting us into the world of forensics, really known as speech and debate at El Camino College. Really a great team, great success. And you all coaches and professors do an amazing job. And our students are very lucky to have you on their side.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.